Week 9 in the NFL continues tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Not a great game. We'll get Casey joining us. One thought on each game, including that one tonight. We'll look back at Week 9 in the NFL season, which just will finish up tonight. And he joins us each and every Monday with one thought on every game here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Casey, welcome back, pal.
Hey, great to be here.
Yeah, man. It was a pretty interesting weekend as we get into one thought on each game. Let's get a couple thoughts on tonight's game because I know the Jets are terrible, but what are we finding out about this New England team? I mean, 2-5, and this is kind of a make-or-break situation for them. What is the feel around New England and this team?
The thing about this, is how bad their defense looks. I mean, people keep talking about their offense, and yeah, they look terrible without Brady there. I mean, their defense, the last 3 weeks, they've given up 135, 197, and 190 yards rushing. That's 387 yards rushing in the last 2 weeks. That a Belichick defense would do that? I mean, he always thinks that if you can't beat the run with just creative play calling, that you just go physically dominate it one way or another. Well, that's not what's happening to them. I don't think it'll hurt them tonight, but, I mean, that's what's getting me about their team is as bad as their offense is. Their defense is playing just as poorly.
What are you seeing from Cam Newton?
I think all the pounding and beatings that he took in Carolina, I think they took a lot out of him. I just don't think he's the same quarterback. And plus, he played well earlier this year, got COVID. Not saying that was definitely it, but he played well. He gets it. He's out for a time. He comes back and he's playing even worse. I got to wonder if there's a residual there.
Sam Darnold, what's the take on him?
I think that Sam Darnold could be, and I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but if you remember back to Jim Plunkett back with the Raiders, Jim Plunkett was a guy who was a number one pick in the draft. He played well really early on in his career for like a year and maybe two, and then he was on a bad team and got beat up, and then he got traded to the 49ers and he got beat up, and he was a backup for the Raiders, and when their starting quarterback got hurt, he came in there, and once you surrounded him with better talent, he suddenly looked like a quarterback. He's an actual legit Hall of Fame candidate. Well, I don't know if Darnold's going to be a Hall of Fame candidate, but when you give him the kind of talent that he's had in New York and you give him the coaching that Gase has given him, which Gase is a better coach than people think, but he is pretty bad as far as offensive play calling. He's not very creative there. You do that for any quarterback, and they're going to play poorly. I think if you put him on another team, the Jets ever put him on the market and said, hey, we think he's done, and some smart team decided, like the 49ers decided, hey, we'll go get him. If the 49ers said Darnold, he'd be a Pro Bowl player.
It's funny you say that because we often talk about if they get the number one pick, they're going to get Lawrence, and then I guess Darnold's sweepstakes would be interesting. I see like the teams that have these older guys, the Bradys, the Rivers, the Brees, the Roethlisbergers, that they target a guy like Sam Darnold so that, hey, we can't draft a guy high in the first round, but if you could trade for one, we'll go get him.
I would think there's an old saying that in the NFL that a franchise quarterback, there's no price that's too high to pay. Ernie Accorsi was a famous NFL personnel guy for years, and that was one of his sayings. He said, there's no price that's too high to pay for a franchise quarterback. Well, Darnold, I think he qualifies, or he's pretty darn close. So if you had 3 or 4 teams competing for it, they should be able to get some, not a Herschel Walker caliber trade, not a break the bank trade, but something pretty good and get a good deal for him because he's still young enough to where if you gave up, say, a couple of ones for him, and he could become if not a franchise quarterback, but a top 10 quarterback, there are a lot of organizations that can make a Super Bowl run if they got him.
All right, thought tonight. I mean, New England's got to go on the road. They're somehow a 10-point favorite. I mean, this is a 2-5 team that's a double-digit favorite. Can the Jets get their first win?
I'd like them more if I thought their running game could do it, but Gore's not very good, and Perine, the backup, he's been better, and they get Ty Johnson as a 3 for them. They all could put up a solid running game, but I just don't see them getting close to 200 yards rushing. So I still think they'll be able to keep it closer than most people think, but the Patriots have so many weaknesses. I think this is going to be an ugly, say, 23-17 game for New England.
All right, one thought every game. Week 9, Casey Joyner, thefootballscientist.com. Let's get his take on what we saw in Week 9. Denver goes to Atlanta, comes up short. Atlanta picks up the win. Drew Lock, a big game there. Denver's a tough one to read. They're one of those teams that really doesn't have an identity, and Atlanta picks up another win.
Atlanta, hey, they're playing great with that new coach. I mean, they're almost undefeated. They would have been if Gurley didn't fall over the goal line in that one game against Detroit. So Atlanta's playing really well. And finally, a game where they looked like the team was coming back, and they held on to the lead. So kudos to them. But yeah, Denver's a very young offense though, and if they give them time to gel, and they'll be a better team down the road.
All right, a little bit of a surprise, I guess. Seattle goes to Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo had stepped up in competition a couple times, couldn't get the job done. They got it done and some. They put up a 44 burger on Seattle. We've been questioning Seattle's defense. It came up to bite them. Big game there for the Buffalo Bills.
Big time. And I said that going into the weekend, I told a lot of my fantasy subscribers that Allen was going to have a great game because Seattle's defense is still playing that badly. But the idea that Seattle played Buffalo and said, hey, we're going to play their running game. We got a really creative running game. They expected that they were going to stop Buffalo's running game and not the Buffalo would go after their pass defense, and that was a mistake on their part.
Yeah, the Bills get that win 44-34. Josh Allen, 415 yards. Stephon Diggs goes over 100 yards receiving. Chicago loses to Tennessee. The Titans get back on the winning track. Big day for Nick Foles, by the way, 335 yards. But the Bears, the offense, still a big problem.
They just can't get me, and now their running back has a concussion, so it's going to add to that. They hold Derrick Henry to 68 yards. I mean, that's really good. Their defense is that strong, but if you want to get these low-scoring games, you still can't win them if you're not going to score 20 points. And the Bears have trouble scoring 20 points against the Titans defense that really is not that good. So I think the Bears they're a limited team, and their limitations are starting to show up.
Titans stay on top in the South. Speaking of the South, they get some separation because the Colts lose at home against Baltimore. Not a great day for Phil Rivers, and obviously the Colts, we thought, Baltimore, okay, every time they've stepped up in competition, it hasn't gone so well. Well, they handled the Colts pretty well.
They did. I thought the Colts would play better, and I'm kicking myself because Philip Rivers is still Philip Rivers. In today's NFL, when he started off, you could get away with making risky passes and having turnovers. But the NFL today has really learned how to manage and contain turnovers, so they're even more damaging to your team than it would have been, say, a decade ago. And that's part of the reason Rivers just can't get by with the mistakes he's making.
One thought, every game in Week 9 from Casey Joyner. Let's go to Carolina, Kansas City. This was a good one, very competitive. Carolina feels like they've been in this game all season long. McCaffrey gets hurt. Huge day for Mahomes and Kelsey.
I wonder how good Carolina would have been this year if McCaffrey was fully healthy. I know Mike Davis has done well in his absence, and now McCaffrey's battling his shoulder injury, and he might not play this week, so it's going to be a problem for them. What they've learned, though, and I know that the Chiefs got the win in a shootout contest, which is rare for them, or it's a 50-50 prop, so kudos to them for that. But what the Panthers are learning is that our quarterback is that good. The plays that he was making, that one dive for the first down. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is not a franchise quarterback. I wouldn't go so far, but is he a top 10 contender for a quarterback? Yeah, he absolutely is.
Yeah, he's sitting on my fantasy bench. I probably shouldn't have done that. Detroit, Minnesota. Minnesota's starting to play better football all of a sudden. I don't know if it can get them back there. The NFC is not all that deep in terms of you need 3 wild cards there, and there's not a whole heck of a lot of contenders. Can the Vikings get themselves going? Well, they took another step in the right direction. 34-20, Dalvin Cook. Smart people drafted him in their fantasy league like me.
Yes, exactly. I've got him in one fantasy league, too, in the Scott Fishbowl Fantasy League. So, yeah, he's a great fantasy player. And the thing is Minnesota is now becoming what they want to be. Zimmer doesn't want to be a Kirk Cousins-centric offense passing type of team. He wants to be a Cook and Madison run the ball and have Cousins throw vertical. That's what he wants to be. And now that Cook has the ground game going, they're getting back to what they want to be, and it protects their defense too. So I think that they keep playing this kind of ball. Yeah, they could be a contender for the 7th seed, or if the NFL goes to an 8th seed because of what's going on with COVID, they could definitely be a contender for that.
Right. Well, maybe they should have thought of that before they gave Cousins all that money. Just a thought, maybe, right?
Yes.
NFC East, the Giants are in the race. They beat Washington on the road. Big day. Alex Smith goes over 300 yards in that game, but it's the Giants who get the big play late, and it puts them at 2-7, but a game and a half back in the NFC East.
It shows that the NFC East is playing a lot better. I've said about this game going into the contest that these teams, although they only had 3 wins between them coming into the game, they were playing a lot better. Washington, now again, Smith getting 3 1/4 and doing it after taking over. He didn't play a full game. McLaurin's a fantastic receiver. The Giants still have a ground game going, even though they've lost running backs left and right. So I think both of these teams they're not going to be easy out the last 8 weeks of the season.
All right, in a game that really has, it was an entertaining game, this Houston-Jacksonville game, 27-25. It was fun to watch. Jake Luton goes over 300 yards in the game, but they lose. They come back. He gets a 2-point conversion, comes up just short, but both these teams have a lot of issues.
They do. It's good for the Jaguars, though, that are finding out of Luton what he is, kind of like the Dolphins are doing with Tua. They're finding out what they have at quarterback and letting him throw vertical, which Minshew couldn't do because of the injury. So I think the Jaguars will be a different team down the stretch. But Houston, they've got a lot more talent than what they've been showing. Their run defense is terrible, but they were able to keep things in check. So kudos to them. But, yeah, kind of a bland game between these teams.
Yeah, Jake Luton was the quarterback there for the Jacksonville Jags. So they've gone from Minshew mania to let's root for Loot. All right, the Vegas Raiders, another team that's tough to figure out. They win 31-26. They've all of a sudden won 2 in a row. They're 5-3. The Chargers, again, can't figure out a way to get it done. Justin Herbert had another big day. It seems like the same game happens for the Chargers every week. But the Raiders, watch out, all of a sudden, 5-3, 2 in a row.
It's going to be counterintuitive, but the Chargers, even though they have Herbert and they have the better passing game, I would think, than the Raiders, going into that contest, they'd been in, I think it was 4 shootout games this year. That's where teams scored 24 or more points. They'd won one of them. The Raiders have been 3-0 in shootouts, despite the fact that they don't have what would look like a shootout caliber offense. So I think the Chargers need to stop getting into these games and find a way to get Herbert to get a lead and then slow things down, because they keep losing shootout contests because they're just not very good at those games.
All right, a couple more. One thought, every game from NFL insider Casey Joyner, the footballscientist.com. Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin has now 14 straight non-losing seasons, but this one, in an undefeated year, if he would have lost this one to Dallas, you would have been on here saying he Tomlining that game right there. But they figured out a way down 19-9 to knock off a Cowboys team who is playing better defensively, no question.
They're playing better defensively. They are run blocking fairly well, and they got really aggressive in the special teams. That their quarterback takes some aggressive plays, but his inconsistency showed up at the end of the game. But it says something for Pittsburgh. You see a lot of times through NFL history that teams like this, where teams that play good enough to lose but still find a way to win, a lot of times they seem to be teams of destiny, and that right now seems to be what the Steelers are, except I'll say this. Tomlin said if we keep playing like this, we are going to get a loss on our record pretty soon. They need to get this thing shored up because they can't keep getting these kinds of wins.
All right, Dallas falls to 2-7 with the loss, 24-19. Roethlisberger over 300 yards in the game. All right, fun one. Maybe the most fun game of the day. Miami, Tua, 34. Kyler Murray, 31. Back and forth. Murray goes over 100 yards rushing. He had a big day passing, but Tua got it done. And the Dolphins on the road get to 5-3.
4th straight win, and that defense is very good, especially their front seven. They are an impact front seven. And notice, we talk about the Patriots' defense. Yeah, okay, Patricia left to go to Detroit. They're not doing anything. Look at Brian Flores. Everybody's now talking about him as Coach of the Year. We've been talking about on the show here for a few weeks now that, hey, he's been coaching at that level. And that's what he's given to their defense is part of what the Patriots have lost on their defense. And Tua, I think they now know what they have with Tua. They have a guy who is their guy because they needed to find out what he was because they've got that Houston pick. They needed to find out if he's their guy. I think they found that out, and they are a legit playoff contender.
Yes, and they have a stretch of games coming up where they should be the favorite for at least 4 straight games. The Dolphins. Arizona's a fun team, too. Keep an eye on both those teams. Final game of the night, not such a good game. New Orleans 38, Tampa Bay 3. Taysom Hill, how many times has he led the team in receiving? Well, he had 54 yards. That was enough yesterday to get the job done. Breeze didn't have that big of a day, but somehow they won 38-3. That's how bad Brady and the Bucs offense was on Sunday night.
They were terrible. The defense played badly, too. There was an interesting thing. There's a guy named Coach Voss, V-A-S-S. He has a Twitter account, and he does this podcast where he interviews coaches. And he interviewed Dean Pease, who used to work with the Patriots. And Pease said that when he was with the Patriots, that Belichick only worked on the defense about 45 minutes a week and then spent the rest of his time with Brady working on the offense. And the thing is it's interesting when you think about that because maybe they found ways to maximize Brady's talents that they're just not finding in Tampa because that's a couple games in a row where he's not played quite as well. And I got to wonder if teams are going to start figuring out how to stop the Arians version of Brady.
All right, that's one thought on every game with NFL insider Casey Joyner. Now, I do want to get your thoughts on a conversation we were having earlier before you came on, which is you see a guy like Carson Wentz, and now you're watching the league, and I feel like Eagles fans are kind of like looking around saying, hey, we had this shiny new toy, but all the new toys have a lot more like you got the Kyler Murrays and the Tuas. Like, the quarterback position looks like it's changing right as you got yours, and it feels like you have the old version of the new toy all of a sudden.
Yeah, like an earlier version of the iPhone before they added some better cameras.
Like the technology has gotten better from the iPhone 2 to the iPhone 6, and you have the 2, and you're like, this was cool, but look how fast the technology is moving here.
Yeah, I think there's things that other teams could do. The interesting thing, though, I was thinking about this just a few minutes ago, that the teams, what we're seeing in the NFL now is that the first 4 weeks of the year, teams kind of use that as their preseason, what used to be preseason 20 years ago, and they get up to speed. Then the next 4 weeks, blocking is better, tackling is better, and teams start to do more creative play calling. And then, as the season progresses on, defense, they start to see a lot more creativity and such. I got to wonder if that's what the Eagles are going to be spending their off week on, is that sort of thing. So I'm curious to see if they find new creative ways to use Wentz's talents and get some healthy people around him, and if we might see a better Wentz down the stretch, because what he's doing right now, I think he has a skill set that's pretty similar to a lot of these guys. He's just trying to make too many plays because he's got so many injuries around him. You give him some creativity and give him some healthy players, and I think we'll see a better Carson.
Well, and I wonder, how much does a coach scale back their offense due to injury? I mean, so many different guys in and out of the lineup. Does the coach then have to scale back his playbook?
I think it's well, to use an example, the Eagles are using a ton of zone blocking on offense, and there's certain things that you can't attack defense in a certain way if you're only going to use zone blocking. If you're trying to attack a particular weakness, a particular defense as well, if that's all you can do, or you could do trap plays, they need to be able to attack defenses on the ground that way. In the air, it's the same thing. There might be certain types of offensive schemes that you can't use because you just don't have faith in the people to be able to run all the routes. So, yeah, I think that's a lot to do with it, but I think Peterson giving him a week to figure out what he can do with what he has, I think it might, at least for the first couple of games after the bye, I think it might lead to some more interesting offense and a better Carson Wentz.
All right, that we'll see. The first game out of the break this Sunday, 1 o'clock, right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's the Eagles. It's the Giants with kind of first place on the line. If the Eagles can get a win, that would really push the Giants out of this thing. They are only a game in. Well, it's weird. The Giants are 2-7 because they haven't had their bye yet, and the Eagles are 3-4-1. So you got that tie that's really causing some wonkiness in these standings, but that's the matchup on Sunday. We'll have it here. Casey's back on Friday. He'll give us thoughts on Eagles, Giants, and one thought on every Week 10 game. Can you believe we're in double-digit weeks now?
It is flying by. I never thought it was going to be all these issues and such, and hey, we're just getting regular weeks, and every week it feels great.
Oh, boy. All right, Casey, back on Friday. Thanks, pal.
Appreciate it, Mike.
And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.